She entered without knocking, undressed, and took her place beside me. Its surface shimmered with colors that defied any known spectrum. Forests glowed faintly, rivers sparkled like liquid glass, and mountains floated impossibly above valleys. The crew of the expedition ship was tense. Months of travel through the void had left them fatigued, cautious, and eager for the unknown, but nothing could have prepared them for a planet that seemed alive even from orbit. Captain Ryland stood at the observation deck, watching the rotating surface below. His fingers tapped lightly against the glass, though the vibrations were pointless in the vacuum of space. The planet was beautiful, yes, but beautiful often meant danger. He had learned that lesson on other worlds. His crew whispered among themselves, their voices low and uncertain. They debated landing zones, potential threats, and the strange readings coming from the planet's magnetic field. But Ryland hardly heard them. His mind was on procedure, on protocol, and on the mission he had sworn to complete: explore, document, and report back to humanity. Then, without warning, the airlock hissed. The hiss was soft but definite, echoing through the corridor like a whispered challenge. All heads turned. No announcement, no prior signal, just a sudden intrusion. And through the opened airlock stepped a figure, confident, composed, and startlingly calm. It was Lieutenant Kayla, a new recruit who had been assigned to the mission only weeks before. Her arrival was so sudden that it felt as though she had appeared from thin air. The crew froze. She carried no equipment, no visible tools, and yet she walked with the certainty of someone who belonged exactly where they were. Some of the crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Who let her in?" muttered one engineer, adjusting his uniform as if that could somehow restore order. But Ryland's eyes remained fixed on her. There was something about her presence, a subtle authority, an unspoken assurance that made him sit up straighter. She did not apologize, explain, or even greet them formally. She simply walked past the airlock and took her place beside him, leaning slightly on the rail as if she had always been part of the command structure. "Lieutenant Kayla," Ryland said finally, his voice steady but curious. "You didn't follow protocol. You can't just enter like that." Kayla smiled faintly, as though the rules were suggestions and she had simply ignored them for efficiency. "Captain," she said calmly, "sometimes rules slow us down. I thought it better to arrive here rather than waste time." Time, that single word carried weight. The crew murmured uneasily. In space, time was precious. Every decision, every hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. Ryland studied her for a moment. There was no recklessness in her step, no carelessness in her stance, only purpose. He found himself wondering if this new recruit understood something they did not. "Fine," he said after a pause. "You're here, but you will follow my orders from now on." "I will, Captain," Kayla replied, still calm, still steady, and with that she joined the crew at the observation deck. The sensors flickered on the display panels, drawing everyone's attention. The planet's surface, beautiful and mysterious, was shifting in ways that defied prediction. Floating landmasses drifted above valleys, streams wound through the sky in spiraling loops, and strange lights pulsed from what appeared to be cities, or perhaps they were living formations. The planet was alive, that much was certain, though no one could say exactly how. Ryland's mind raced. Landing would be risky, but retreating now would be cowardly. Humanity had sent explorers to the stars for moments like this, to stand on worlds untouched, to witness life and beauty that could not exist on Earth. And yet, as he glanced at Kayla, he felt a strange reassurance. She moved among the crew with quiet confidence, checking instruments, reviewing landing plans, and speaking with subtle authority. Where others hesitated, she acted decisively. It was clear that if anyone could help them survive this mission, it was her. The decision was made. The landing pod would descend, carrying a team of 8 humans to the surface. Kayla immediately volunteered to join, disregarding the protests of the engineering officer. "You don't know what's down there," the officer said, his voice tight with concern. "Exactly," Kayla replied, "which is why I want to go." Ryland nodded, sensing that resistance would be futile. Kayla's confidence was infectious. One by one, the crew began to prepare, donning their suits and checking their equipment. Kayla's movements were methodical, almost intuitive. She knew the right tools to carry, the optimal way to distribute weight, and even the fastest paths down the pod's ramp. It was as though she had trained on this exact planet her entire life, though she had never mentioned it before. The pod shook gently as it detached from the Odyssey, gravity drawing them downward toward the alien surface. Outside, the sky was not blue but a shifting spectrum of green and gold. Clouds moved in swirling patterns, sometimes against the wind, sometimes with it, giving the impression that the planet breathed. Rivers of shimmering liquid traced impossible paths across the land, reflecting the light in ways that made the human eyes strain to focus. Landing was rough but controlled. Kayla was the first to step onto the surface, her boots sinking slightly into a soft, glowing moss. She extended a hand to help the others, her presence steadying the crew. Even the most nervous explorers began to relax. Kayla's calm was contagious. She moved with purpose, scanning the horizon, pointing out areas of interest, warning of hazards, and suggesting safe routes. Hours passed as the team explored. The planet's flora and fauna were unlike anything documented in human history. Trees pulsed with light, and flowers opened and closed in seconds. Small creatures with translucent skin and multiple limbs scuttled along the mossy ground. Some were curious, approaching the humans cautiously. Others remained hidden, observing from the shadows. The crew kept detailed notes, recording everything, but Kayla's observations stood out. She noticed patterns others did not see, predicting the behavior of the creatures and even the movements of the floating landmasses. As evening approached, the crew gathered near a cliff that overlooked a vast valley. The floating mountains above cast long shadows, and the rivers below glowed softly. The sight was breathtaking, and for a moment the humans felt the full weight of their insignificance. Yet Kayla did not flinch. She stood at the edge, looking out with a mixture of curiosity and determination. "Captain," she said quietly, "this planet isn't just alive, I think it's aware of us." Rylan frowned. "Aware? You mean it can think?" "I don't know," Kayla admitted. "But the way the environment responds to our movements, it's almost as if it's observing, testing, learning." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Many wanted to return to the pod and report to the Odyssey, but Kayla remained calm. "We've come this far," she said firmly. "We'll explore a little more, carefully, and if the planet allows us, we'll learn from it." That night the humans set up a temporary camp. The glowing moss served as natural light, illuminating the area with a soft, eerie glow. Kayla shared strategies for monitoring the planet's responses, encouraging the crew to be cautious but confident. Around the fire they ate, discussed findings, and slowly began to trust her instincts. Rylan sat beside Kayla, studying her. "You didn't knock," he said quietly. "And yet here you are, leading them as if you've always been in charge." Kayla smiled faintly. "Sometimes the universe doesn't give you the courtesy of knocking, Captain. You either step forward or wait forever." Her words lingered in the air, and Rylan felt their weight. Humanity had stepped into the unknown countless times, but never like this. Never with a world that seemed alive and aware. And never with someone like Kayla beside him, undaunted, confident, and unafraid. Outside, the alien world pulsed with light and energy. Somewhere deep in the forests, shadows moved, observing, waiting. The humans were not alone, and the planet was far more complex than any map or sensor could reveal. But for the first time in weeks, Rylan felt hope. They had entered a world of wonder and danger, and with Kayla at his side, he believed they could face whatever came next. As he watched her silhouette against the glowing horizon, he realized that this mission was not just about exploration or survival. It was about understanding, courage, and the extraordinary resilience of humanity. And Kayla, who had entered without warning, had already proven herself to be an essential part of that journey. The night stretched on, filled with quiet anticipation. Stars shone above, the alien sky shimmering with colors unknown to Earth. And on the surface below, the planet waited, alive and watchful, ready to reveal its secrets to those brave enough to learn. The morning light on the alien world was unlike anything the crew had experienced. It wasn't golden or pale blue like the sunrises back on Earth. It was a shifting hue of green and gold, with streaks of soft violet dancing across the horizon. The floating mountains reflected the light in fragmented patterns, giving the illusion of 1,000 tiny suns rising at once. The air was heavy with the scent of unknown flora, sweet but not unpleasant, and the moss beneath their boots seemed to pulse softly, like the planet itself was breathing. Kayla led the team forward, her confidence unwavering. "Stay alert," she said calmly, though there was no fear in her voice. "This world responds to everything we do. Move carefully, watch carefully, and we'll be fine." The crew followed, their equipment humming softly as they collected data. The human senses struggled to comprehend the planet's reality. Trees swayed without wind, their leaves glowing in shifting colors. Rivers flowed against gravity, rising toward the floating mountains before curling back down like liquid ribbons. Small creatures with translucent skin and dozens of limbs scuttled about, observing the humans with cautious curiosity. Every step they took seemed to echo, and yet the echoes didn't fade. They lingered as though the planet itself were listening. Rylan glanced at Kayla. She walked at the front, scanning the terrain with sharp, calculating eyes. She didn't just look at the world, she studied it as if she could understand its rhythm and predict its next move. Every so often, she would pause, kneel, and touch the glowing moss or a strange vine, her fingers grazing the surface with gentle curiosity. And every time the environment responded subtly, a shift in color, a ripple through the moss, a ripple that looked almost like the planet acknowledged her presence. "Do you think it's alive?" asked one of the scientists, a young woman named Lyra. Her voice was small, hesitant, but full of fascination. "Alive," Kayla repeated, tilting her head. "Yes, but more than that, aware. I don't know if it's conscious like we are, but it notices, it responds. It studies us as we study it." The thought made the crew uneasy. Humanity had faced many dangers in space, but nothing like a world that could observe and react to them. Rylan reminded himself to stay focused. Danger wasn't just creatures or storms, it could come from the planet itself. They approached a valley where the rivers of liquid glass converged, forming a shallow lake that shimmered like a mirror. The reflections of the floating mountains above were distorted, bending and stretching as though the lake had a mind of its own. Kayla stopped at the edge of the water, crouching to examine the surface. She held her hand just above the liquid, watching as the ripples formed patterns that almost resembled symbols. "Captain," she said, standing suddenly. "I think this planet communicates through its environment. Watch carefully. Every movement, every change in light or sound could be a message." Rylan frowned. "Message from what?" "From itself," Kayla said simply. "It wants to be understood." The crew exchanged nervous glances. No one had been trained for this. No one had imagined encountering a planet that might think. But Kayla's certainty was contagious. Slowly, they began to observe, noticing subtle changes. Moss shifted as they stepped near it, lights pulsed in different rhythms, and even the small creatures seemed to respond differently depending on the humans' movements. Hours passed as the landing party moved deeper into the valley. They recorded data, scanned flora and fauna, and documented every anomaly. Kayla led them with precision, pointing out patterns that none of the sensors could detect. She suggested paths that kept them safe from sudden gravitational shifts and floating rock formations. Her intuition was uncanny, almost as though she could predict the planet's reactions before they happened. By midday, they arrived at a structure that made the humans gasp. Rising from the center of the valley was what looked like a tower, smooth and translucent, pulsing with light. It was clearly not natural, yet it blended with the surroundings as though it had grown from the planet itself. The humans circled it cautiously, scanning, measuring, and taking notes. Kayla approached it without hesitation. "Do you think it's alive too?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," Kayla admitted, "but it is connected to the planet. Everything here is connected. Observe, learn, and remain calm." She reached out and touched the surface. The light pulsed gently beneath her fingers, spreading outward in waves. The humans stared, mesmerized, as the tower seemed to respond to her presence. Patterns of light moved across its surface, almost like symbols or language, shifting rhythmically, pulsing with a quiet energy. Rylan stepped closer, cautious but curious. "Can it understand us?" he asked. Kayla didn't answer. She continued to study the shifting lights, her expression one of concentration and wonder. Slowly, she raised her hand, tracing a pattern in the air. The lights responded, following her movements. It was subtle at first, then more distinct. Symbols and pulses formed a rhythm, as though the planet and the humans were attempting their first conversation. The crew watched in awe. They had trained for exploration, for survival, for scientific discovery, but nothing prepared them for the realization that they were communicating with an entire world. Every thought of danger was replaced by fascination. Humanity had always excelled at understanding, at interpreting patterns and signals, and here that skill was proving invaluable. "Captain," Kayla said finally, lowering her hand. "It's testing us, observing us. We need to continue moving carefully and see how it responds." The landing party pressed forward, moving toward the base of the tower. As they walked, the environment around them shifted. Floating rocks rotated in precise orbits, rivers changed direction, and light from the flora pulsed in time with their steps. It was as though the planet were creating a path for them, guiding them deeper into its world. Hours turned into an alien version of night. The colors of the sky deepened, shifting through violet, indigo, and green. The floating mountains cast long, dancing shadows across the valley. The crew set up a temporary camp near the base of the tower. The moss provided a soft surface for resting, and its glow served as natural light. Kayla moved among the crew, instructing them on observation methods, noting how the environment reacted to their presence. "Every action matters," she explained. "Even a small movement, a sound, or a change in light can alter the planet's response. Be mindful, learn, adapt. Humanity thrives because we notice details others might miss." The crew nodded, understanding more clearly why Kayla had been so essential since the moment she arrived. She had entered their mission without hesitation, and now it was clear she was not just brave, but wise. Her confidence and intelligence inspired them to push past fear, to embrace curiosity over caution. During the night, the tower's light pulsed rhythmically, illuminating the valley in soft waves. The humans noticed patterns, flashes that seemed to mirror their movements, shifts that corresponded to sounds they made. The planet was alive, aware, and learning. The experience left them exhausted but exhilarated, each crew member feeling a mix of awe, fear, and pride. Rylan watched Kayla as she moved among the crew, checking equipment, reassuring the nervous, and quietly observing the glowing landscape. He felt a deep respect for her. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. She had entered without warning, unafraid, and had immediately become an essential part of the mission. Her presence reminded him of the human qualities that made exploration possible: courage, curiosity, and a determination to adapt. By the time the alien night reached its deepest hour, the crew had settled into a rhythm. They observed, recorded, and learned. Kayla had led them to understand that survival wasn't just about physical strength or technological tools. It was about intelligence, intuition, and respect for the unknown. The planet was testing them, and so far they were passing. As they rested, Rylan walked to the edge of the valley, watching the rivers spiral upward and the mountains float above. He realized that humanity had reached a new frontier, one that required more than technology. It required the human spirit. And with Kayla at his side, guiding the crew with confidence and insight, he felt certain that humanity would not only survive here but thrive. Somewhere deep in the glowing forests, shadows moved, not menacingly but curiously, as if the planet itself was observing. The humans were not intruders. They were students, explorers, participants in a dialogue that stretched beyond language and comprehension. Rylan glanced back at Kayla, standing quietly among the crew, her eyes reflecting the pulsing light of the tower. She had entered their mission unannounced, bold and unafraid, and now she had proven herself indispensable. Her courage and intelligence were a mirror of what humanity could achieve when fear was replaced by understanding and hesitation by curiosity. The night stretched on, filled with the soft hum of the alien world. Every ripple in the water, every pulse of light, every shift in the floating mountains was a reminder that this planet was alive, aware, and willing to teach. And humanity, led by Kayla and guided by their own resilience, was ready to learn. The first day on the alien planet ended not with conquest, but with wonder. And in that wonder lay the true power of humanity, the ability to step into the unknown, to adapt, and to thrive where others might only fear to tread. The next morning, the crew of the Odyssey landing party awoke to a world bathed in shifting colors, more intense than any sunrise. On Earth, the floating mountains above glimmered in soft violet and gold, and the rivers of liquid glass reflected the sky in fractured patterns. Even the moss beneath their boots pulsed gently, as if the planet itself were breathing alongside them. Kayla moved among the team, quietly checking sensors and adjusting instruments, her calm demeanor reassuring everyone. "Captain," Lyra said softly, breaking the morning silence, "I've been analyzing the tower. The light pulses they're repeating in patterns." "Almost like a language," Rylan nodded, studying the translucent structure. He had spent years exploring new worlds, but nothing prepared him for this. The tower was more than a structure. It seemed alive, responding to every sound, every movement, every change in light. Then perhaps it's trying to communicate, he said. Kayla's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Yes, but it's not a language we know, not yet. It's responding to us, testing us, seeing how we react. We have to be careful. One wrong move could provoke I don't know what. The planet isn't hostile, but it isn't human either. The crew hesitated at the base of the tower, awed and slightly afraid. But Kayla stepped forward without hesitation. Her boots sank slightly into the glowing moss, and she placed her hand on the smooth surface of the tower. The light pulsed, spreading outward in delicate ripples. Slowly, she moved her fingers, tracing shapes in the air. To the crew's astonishment, the patterns of light mirrored her movements, forming shapes and symbols that seemed to respond, almost like recognition. It's learning, she whispered. It understands gestures, intention, awareness. It's studying us as much as we're studying it. Rylan approached cautiously. Can it understand us if we speak? He asked. Kayla shook her head. Not in our language. We need to observe, not talk. Words may confuse it. Actions, patterns, gestures, those it can interpret. For hours they experimented. The humans moved slowly, deliberately, tracing patterns in the air, shifting their positions, and even moving small objects across the moss. The tower responded each time, subtly changing the intensity of its glow, sending ripples across the ground, and even causing the small, translucent creatures nearby to react. It was a dance, a dialogue without words. Humanity, for the first time, realized that intelligence could exist in forms completely different from their own. Kayla guided the crew with patience and clarity. Notice the rhythm, she said. When we move calmly, predictably, it mirrors us. When we act too quickly, too forcefully, the response is unpredictable. We need to adapt to show understanding. The crew quickly fell into a rhythm, moving as a group, each step and gesture coordinated to avoid startling the environment. For the first time, fear was replaced by curiosity. Humanity had faced danger countless times, but never like this, never against an intelligence that was silent, patient, and vast, yet gentle. By midday, they discovered a small opening in the tower's base. It was almost imperceptible, blending seamlessly with the translucent surface. Kayla examined it closely, sensing a faint energy pulsing from within. This is an invitation, she said, or at least a pathway it wants us to enter. Rylan hesitated. It could be dangerous. We don't know what's inside. Kayla's eyes met his. Captain, danger is always present. We can either step forward or retreat. I say we move forward, carefully. The crew readied themselves, checking equipment and donning protective gear. Kayla led the way, stepping into the small opening first. Inside, the tower was vast, far larger than it appeared from the outside. Light pulsed gently along the walls, creating pathways of illumination that guided their steps. The air was warm, almost breathable, and faint vibrations hummed through the floor. It was a world within a world, alive with energy and motion. As they ventured deeper, the environment shifted subtly, responding to their presence. The walls pulsed in rhythm with their movements, and floating platforms rearranged themselves, forming paths across wide chasms. The humans realized that the planet was not just observing, they were participating in a cooperative experiment, testing human intelligence and adaptability. At the center of the tower, they found it, a massive core of light and energy, suspended in midair, spinning gently. It radiated a soft warmth that filled the chamber, and every pulse seemed to carry a message. The crew gathered around, awestruck, unable to speak. The intelligence was immense, incomprehensible in scale, yet calm and inviting. Kayla stepped forward, raising her hand. She traced patterns in the air, simple gestures meant to convey respect and curiosity. The core responded, its pulses synchronizing with her movements, growing brighter and sending ripples through the chamber. Slowly, she experimented with more complex gestures, forming loops and spirals, waves and lines. The core responded each time, its rhythm adapting to theirs. It's learning from us, Kayla whispered. It recognizes intention. It recognizes us as thinkers, as learners. Humanity's curiosity, adaptability, and patience are being observed. That is why we were allowed here. Rylan watched her carefully. You're communicating with it? Yes, Kayla said simply. Not with words, but with action. It's the same way we would communicate with any unknown intelligence. Observation, adaptation, response, that is how humans survive. Hours passed as the crew continued the dialogue. They discovered that the core could influence the environment, shifting gravity, moving platforms, and even altering the intensity of the light. Each time they adapted, the planet responded positively. Every mistake caused subtle adjustments, gentle corrections, but never harm. Humanity was learning to communicate without words, to understand intelligence beyond their own species. During this process, small creatures began to approach, drawn by the humans' careful movements. They floated alongside, studying them as humans studied the core. Kayla noticed patterns in the creature's behavior, recognizing signals that could indicate curiosity, caution, or approval. By understanding these small beings, the humans gained further insight into the planet's intelligence as a whole. The experiment reached its climax when the core began forming complex patterns of light and motion, more intricate than anything they had seen before. Kayla mirrored the gestures, improvising new sequences that blended human creativity with careful observation. The core responded in kind, forming a mesmerizing dance of light that filled the chamber. The crew realized they were witnessing a first contact not of words, but of minds, a dialogue between species separated by biology and perception, but united by intelligence and curiosity. Rylan felt a surge of pride. Humanity had always prided itself on ingenuity and resilience, but here it was demonstrated on the grandest scale. They were not the strongest species, not the fastest, and perhaps not even the most intelligent in conventional terms. But humans could adapt, learn, and communicate in ways that transcended boundaries. The core recognized that, and humanity was being acknowledged as worthy. As the light patterns slowed, the chamber grew quiet. Kayla stepped back, watching the core settle into a gentle rhythm. The experiment was complete, at least for now. The planet had tested them, observed their reactions, and accepted their presence. "Captain," Kayla said quietly, turning to Rylan, "we've passed the first stage. It trusts us enough to allow interaction. We need to continue learning carefully, but the path forward is open. Humanity is being recognized for what it does best, observing, adapting, and cooperating." Rylan nodded. "We have much to learn, but with you leading, Kayla, I have no doubt we can understand this world." The crew left the core chamber, returning to the valley outside. The alien world looked even more alive now, as though it had acknowledged their presence and was watching with quiet approval. Every river, every floating mountain, every glowing tree seemed to shimmer with awareness. The humans understood in that moment that this planet was not a place to conquer, but a place to learn, to adapt, and to grow. That night around their camp, the humans shared observations, hypotheses, and theories. They discussed patterns in the tower, the reactions of the creatures, and the subtle cues that guided their exploration. Kayla moved among them, encouraging careful thought, cooperation, and experimentation. She reminded them that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to observe, understand, and adapt in ways that no other species could. Rylan stayed by the edge of the camp, watching Kayla as she quietly worked with Lyra on a new method to record the core's light patterns. He realized that she had not only entered their mission without hesitation, but had also fundamentally changed it. Humanity's potential, he thought, was limitless when courage, intelligence, and curiosity were combined. Kayla was the embodiment of that potential, guiding them through a world that was alive, aware, and infinitely complex. As the alien night deepened, stars shone above, reflecting faintly in the rivers and on the floating mountains. The planet pulsed gently, alive, aware, and patient. Humanity had stepped into a dialogue without words, into an intelligence far beyond Earth, and had not faltered. They had adapted, learned, and been accepted, and with Kayla at their side, they were ready to face whatever the planet revealed next. The first contact had been made. Humanity had proven its worth. And somewhere deep in the glowing forests, the planet observed, curious, waiting for more. The following day, the crew woke to a sky alive with colors that shifted unpredictably. It was as though the planet had no fixed rhythm, no fixed rules, only movement and response. Even the floating mountains seemed restless, drifting slowly in new patterns, and the rivers of liquid glass flowed differently from the day before, forming spirals and loops that defied logic. The moss under their boots pulsed softly, alert, as if reminding them that they were still under observation. Kayla gathered the team. "Today," she said calmly, "we go deeper. The planet has allowed us to explore the tower and the valley. Now it will test our adaptability." It will show us environments we may not understand, and we must respond without panic. Stay alert, move together. The crew followed her cautiously, their boots sinking into the glowing moss. As they advanced, the terrain changed. A river that had flowed steadily yesterday now surged like liquid fire, glowing brightly and twisting in spirals that lifted it into the air. A floating mountain drifted closer, its shadow stretching over the valley, shifting gravity subtly. Even small movements caused unexpected reactions. Rylan watched Kayla closely. "How can we predict what it will do next?" he asked, concern in his voice. "We can't predict," she said. "We can only observe, adapt, and respond. That is what humans are best at. The planet is challenging us, yes, but it is also teaching us." The first challenge appeared without warning. A series of floating rocks began rotating rapidly above their path, blocking the trail ahead. The team froze, unsure how to pass without being struck. Kayla stepped forward, studying the patterns. Her eyes followed the arcs and rotations of the rocks as though reading a map in midair. "Move slowly," she instructed. "Watch the rhythm, step only when the space is clear, trust your instincts." One by one, the crew navigated the floating rocks. Each step required focus and precision. A misstep could have been disastrous, but the humans adapted, pausing, observing, and moving in sync. Kayla led the way, her confidence a guiding force. Even the most nervous crew members felt a growing sense of trust, both in her and in their own abilities. Once past the rocks, the terrain shifted again. Gravity itself seemed to fluctuate. A slope that should have been walkable became nearly vertical, and the rivers seemed to rise in arcs that defied reason. Kayla adjusted their course, finding a path along floating platforms that shifted gently beneath their feet. Each platform responded to their weight, tilting slightly, and they had to move carefully to maintain balance. Hours passed as they navigated through the strange landscapes. The planet was not hostile, but it was testing them, pushing them to use every skill they possessed. It was teaching them about adaptation, patience, and teamwork. The humans discovered that moving in sync, communicating through gestures rather than words, and observing subtle cues from the environment were the keys to survival. By midday, they arrived at a canyon filled with glowing mist. The mist was thick, and visibility dropped to a few feet. Strange shapes moved within the fog, and small creatures scuttled past them, occasionally brushing against the human suits. Kayla moved carefully, using the soft pulsing light from the moss to guide them. "Stay close," she instructed. "We don't know what is in the mist. Observe before reacting." The humans learned quickly. They moved as a unit, listening to the subtle changes in sound, feeling vibrations through the moss, and watching the behavior of the creatures around them. Every action was deliberate, every step calculated. The planet tested their observation skills and rewarded precision with safe passage. The canyon ended in a wide clearing. There they saw a new structure, different from the tower. It was low and sprawling, with curved walls that shimmered in translucent colors. Light moved along the walls in patterns that seemed almost alive. Kayla approached cautiously, extending her hand. The walls pulsed in response, and the humans realized that, like the tower, this structure communicated through observation and interaction. Inside, the structure presented a series of challenges. Gravity fluctuated unpredictably, paths shifted, and pools of glowing liquid blocked their progress. Kayla led the crew in adapting to each challenge. They used ropes, carefully weighted tools, and even improvisation with their suits to move safely. The planet seemed to guide them, offering subtle cues in light and movement, encouraging ingenuity rather than forcing them along a single path. At one point, a sudden energy surge caused part of the platform to rise sharply. Kayla quickly reacted, using a rope to stabilize it and guide the crew across. Her calm and precise actions prevented panic and ensured everyone crossed safely. The humans began to realize that this world demanded more than strength. It demanded intelligence, adaptability, and careful attention. During these tests, the crew discovered that the planet's responses were not random. Observing its behavior carefully revealed patterns. Certain gestures, pauses, and careful movements caused favorable shifts in terrain. Rapid or careless actions triggered subtle obstacles. Kayla explained that the planet was teaching them discipline and awareness, qualities that had allowed humanity to survive and thrive across countless worlds. As the day progressed, the environment grew more extreme. Winds of light swept through open spaces, shifting gravity and scattering floating rocks. Pools of liquid reflected distorted images of the crew, and the mist thickened in some areas, obscuring paths. But the humans, guided by Kayla, adapted. They coordinated their movements, communicated silently through gestures, and observed every change in the environment with patience and precision. By late afternoon, they reached a massive chamber within the structure. It was enormous, its walls stretching impossibly high, filled with shifting light and energy. Small creatures scuttled along the walls and floors, watching curiously. At the center, a pool of glowing liquid reflected the entire chamber, shimmering with patterns that shifted and changed. Kayla approached the pool carefully, studying its surface. "This is another test," she said. "We need to understand the patterns, anticipate the changes, and respond without panic. Humanity's strength lies in intelligence, observation, and cooperation. That is what this planet is testing." The crew spent hours analyzing the pool. They discovered that touching it caused ripples in the chamber, subtle vibrations that changed the environment. Moving too quickly or without coordination caused minor shifts that blocked their path. But when they acted together, observing and adjusting, the pool responded favorably, opening pathways and stabilizing floating platforms. Rylan watched Kayla closely. She was the perfect example of human ingenuity and calm under pressure. She entered this world without hesitation and had guided the crew through countless challenges. Her confidence inspired them, her intelligence guided them, and her calm reassured them. She embodied the qualities that allowed humanity to thrive in space and survive the unknown. As night approached, the humans set up a temporary camp within the structure. The glowing walls provided light, and the chamber offered shelter from shifting terrain outside. Kayla moved among the crew, helping them set up equipment and instructing them on careful observation techniques. "Remember," she said quietly, "every action matters. The planet watches, learns, and responds. We are not here to dominate, only to adapt and learn. That is what makes humans remarkable. That is why we are here." The crew reflected on the day's challenges. Each obstacle, each shift in terrain, each reaction of the environment had tested their abilities and rewarded careful observation, patience, and teamwork. Humanity's greatest strength, intelligence, adaptability, and courage was being demonstrated in real time. Late at night, Rylan stepped to the edge of the chamber, looking out at the glowing landscape. The floating mountains drifted gently, rivers twisted in impossible arcs, and the light pulsed softly from the moss below. He realized that this world was alive, aware, and teaching them through challenges rather than words. Kayla joined him silently. "It's incredible," Rylan said quietly. "The planet, it's teaching us but also testing us." Kayla nodded. "Yes, it tests because it wants to see if we can adapt, observe, and cooperate. We've proven we can, but there is more ahead. This world has layers of challenges, each teaching us something new. Humanity thrives on challenges. That is why we are here." Rylan smiled. "And you've guided us through every one." Kayla's eyes reflected the pulsing light of the planet. "We do it together." Humanity is not one person, one skill, or one idea. It's all of us combining intelligence, courage, and cooperation. That is why we survive and thrive. Outside, the alien world pulsed softly, alive and aware. Every ripple in the water, every shift of a floating rock, every glow of moss seemed to acknowledge the humans' presence. They had passed the planet's tests for now, adapting to challenges that required intelligence, ingenuity, and teamwork. The day ended not with conquest, but with understanding. The humans had survived extreme terrain, shifting gravity, and unpredictable environments through careful observation and adaptation. They had learned to communicate with the planet, not with words, but with actions, gestures, and intelligence. Humanity's strength, curiosity, courage, and cooperation was being recognized by an intelligence far beyond anything they had ever known. As the humans rested, Kayla observed them quietly. She knew the next challenges would be even greater. The planet had more to teach, more tests to offer, and more mysteries to reveal. But she also knew that humanity was ready. They had adapted, survived, and learned. And with every challenge, they were proving what made them remarkable. Rylan watched the glowing chamber, reflecting on the journey so far. Humanity had faced dangers before, but never like this. The planet was alive, aware, and testing them in ways no human had ever imagined. And yet, guided by Kayla, they were not just surviving, they were thriving. The alien world pulsed softly in the night, alive and patient. The humans had adapted to its challenges, and the next phase of exploration awaited them. They were ready. The day began with a strange stillness. The glowing moss pulsed softly beneath the humans' boots, but the light was calmer than before, as if the planet itself had paused to observe. Floating mountains drifted lazily in the distance, and the rivers of liquid glass flowed gently, forming patterns that resembled paths or roads. The air hummed faintly with energy, and even the creatures that had accompanied them through the valley moved quietly, almost reverently. Kayla gathered the team at the edge of the clearing. "Today," she said, her voice calm but filled with quiet determination, "we go to the core. This is the heart of the planet, the source of its intelligence. It has tested us, guided us, and observed us. Now it will decide if we are worthy of understanding it fully. We must be careful, focused, and cooperative. Humanity's strength, our intelligence, our courage, our curiosity will be judged here." The crew nodded. Each member understood the weight of the moment. They had faced floating rocks, rivers that defied gravity, unpredictable mist, and shifting terrain. They had learned to communicate with the planet through observation, gestures, and intelligence. But this, the core, was something greater. It was the essence of the world itself, an intelligence beyond human comprehension. Kayla led the way. They moved carefully through the valley, following the subtle cues of light and movement that the planet provided. The floating mountains shifted gently to create a path, and the rivers adjusted their flow to form bridges where needed. Every step was deliberate, every gesture measured, and every action observed. Humanity had become part of the planet's rhythm. As they approached the central chamber, a vast dome of translucent energy rose before them. The walls shimmered with light, and the air vibrated with soft pulses that seemed to echo in their minds. At the center of the dome floated the core, a massive sphere of light and energy, spinning gently, radiating warmth and intelligence. The humans stopped, awestruck. It was more magnificent than anything they had seen. The core was alive in a way that was impossible to describe. Patterns of light moved across its surface, forming spirals, loops, and arcs that seemed almost like language. Kayla stepped forward first. She raised her hand and traced a pattern in the air, slow and deliberate. The core responded, its light pulsing in harmony with her movements. The humans followed her example, coordinating their gestures, and soon the chamber was alive with a dance of light, human action mirrored by planetary response. "It recognizes us," Kayla whispered. "It sees our intention, our intelligence, and our cooperation. This is humanity at its best, curious, courageous, and adaptable. It is acknowledging us." Rylan watched closely. "How do we communicate what we are?" "Through action, observation, and adaptation," Kayla replied. "Words are meaningless here. The core understands patterns, responses, and cooperation. We show it who we are through how we act together." The crew spent hours in this dialogue with the core. They experimented with gestures, movement, and synchronized actions. Every change in light, every pulse of energy, every ripple across the chamber was a response, a lesson, or an acknowledgement. The humans began to notice patterns, subtle shifts that suggested the core was teaching them, encouraging creativity, intelligence, and collaboration. Kayla guided them patiently, explaining each observation and predicting the core's reactions. "Notice how it mirrors our calm actions," she said. "Notice how it reacts to hesitation or panic. It tests, but it does not harm. This is a teaching process. It wants us to succeed because it sees value in intelligence, courage, and cooperation. That is why humans are here." At one point, the core created a complex pattern of light that resembled a spiraling maze. Floating platforms appeared within the chamber, forming a pathway that led closer to the core. Kayla studied the maze carefully and then demonstrated a precise sequence of movements. The crew followed her instructions exactly, moving in harmony, and each step caused the platforms to adjust and stabilize. The core responded with brighter pulses, sending waves of light that filled the chamber. "This is incredible," Rylan said quietly. "We're learning from it and it's learning from us at the same time." "Yes," Kayla replied. "This is the essence of humanity, learning, adapting, and cooperating. The core sees that. That is why it allows us here." As they moved closer, the core's light intensified, creating patterns that seemed to convey recognition. The energy was warm, not threatening, and the humans felt a deep sense of understanding. It was as though the planet itself were communicating, "You are worthy." you observe. You adapt, you cooperate, you belong. The crew realized that this moment was not just about survival or exploration. It was about recognition. Humanity had proven itself through intelligence, ingenuity, courage, and cooperation. The planet acknowledged that humans, despite being small and fragile in the vast universe, possessed qualities that made them remarkable. Kayla stepped beside Rylan, her hand raised once again in a gesture of respect and understanding. The core's light pulsed in harmony with her movements, brighter and more intricate than before. The creatures that had followed them appeared within the chamber, observing silently, their translucent forms reflecting the core's light. The humans understood that they were participants in a grand dialogue, one that transcended language, species, and even biology. Hours passed as the humans continued their interaction. They discovered that the core could manipulate the environment within the chamber, creating obstacles, shifting platforms, and altering gravity. But each challenge was a test of intelligence, observation, and teamwork, not of strength or aggression. The humans adapted, learning to move in coordination, communicate through gestures, and anticipate changes. Kayla explained to the crew that every adaptation, every careful observation, and every successful response reinforced the core's recognition of humanity. "It is seeing what makes us unique," she said. "Not strength, not size, but intelligence, courage, and cooperation. That is why we are allowed here. That is why we are recognized." By late afternoon, the humans had reached the innermost part of the chamber. The core's light intensified, forming patterns that radiated outward in waves. The energy was overwhelming but not harmful, and the crew felt a profound sense of awe. The core was communicating acceptance and acknowledgement, not with words, but with understanding. Rylan took a deep breath. "We've come far," he said quietly. "From a distant ship to this planet to the core itself, humanity has proven itself." Kayla nodded. "Yes, and it's only the beginning. There is knowledge here, understanding, and opportunity. The core has tested us, and now it allows us to learn fully. Humanity's curiosity and courage have earned this moment." The crew spent the remainder of the day exploring the chamber under Kayla's guidance. They discovered subtle energies that could be harnessed to understand the planet's structure and patterns, small creatures that carried messages through movement and light, and formations that suggested a deep intelligence woven into every part of the world. As night approached, the humans set up a temporary camp within the core chamber. The glowing light provided warmth and illumination, and the atmosphere was calm, almost peaceful. Kayla moved among the crew, helping them record observations, teaching them to interpret patterns, and reinforcing the lessons of cooperation and observation. Rylan watched her quietly, reflecting on the journey. She had entered their mission without hesitation, bold and confident, and had guided them through every challenge. Her courage, intelligence, and leadership had shown them the best of humanity, and in doing so had earned the recognition of an intelligence far beyond their comprehension. The planet pulsed gently around them, alive, aware, and patient. Every ripple in the glowing rivers, every shift of the floating mountains, every pulse of light from the moss was a reminder that humanity had been accepted. They had faced tests, adapted, and cooperated. They had communicated without words and understood without speech. Kayla joined Rylan at the edge of the chamber. "We've been recognized," she said softly. "The planet sees us for what we are: curious, courageous, intelligent, and adaptable. It allows us to continue learning, exploring, and thriving." Rylan nodded. "Humanity has always sought the unknown, and we've always adapted. This planet, it acknowledges that." Outside, the alien world shimmered in the night, alive with energy and aware of every movement. The floating mountains drifted, rivers flowed in impossible patterns, and the moss pulsed softly. The humans had proven themselves not through force or domination, but through observation, intelligence, courage, and cooperation. They had achieved the highest recognition the planet could offer. The night was filled with quiet wonder. The humans rested, reflecting on the journey, the challenges, and the lessons learned. They had entered a world alive and aware, navigated its unpredictable terrain, communicated with its intelligence, and earned its acknowledgement. Humanity's qualities, curiosity, courage, ingenuity, and teamwork had been recognized on a scale never imagined. Kayla stood quietly, watching the chamber's light pulse in time with their presence. She knew that the mission was far from over. There were more mysteries to uncover, more challenges to face, and more knowledge to gain. But for now, humanity had achieved something extraordinary. They had entered a dialogue with a planet, learned from it, adapted to its challenges, and been accepted as worthy participants. Rylan joined her, gazing at the core. "We've done well," he said softly. "Not because we are strong, but because we are human." Kayla smiled. "Yes. That is the essence of humanity. Intelligence, courage, curiosity, cooperation. That is why we survive. That is why we are recognized. And that is why we belong here and among the stars." As the humans rested, the planet pulsed gently, alive and aware. The core glowed softly, a silent acknowledgement of their achievement. Humanity had proven itself, and the future awaited, filled with discovery, understanding, and the promise of exploration. In that quiet, glowing chamber, a profound truth was clear. Humanity's greatest strength was not in force, nor in technology alone, but in its intelligence, courage, adaptability, and cooperation. And with these qualities, humans could face any challenge, unlock any mystery, and take their place among the stars. The alien night stretched on, filled with wonder, light, and quiet acknowledgement. Humanity had entered, adapted, learned, and been recognized. And with Kayla at their side, they were ready for whatever the universe would reveal next.